Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, our first minute of Season 2, where we are breaking down the film Blazing Saddles, one blazing credit at a time. I'm Alan Sanders.
And I am Walt Murray.
And we're going to start this first minute one, just the two of us, no guest for the next couple of days, as it's the opening credits, but we will open with the Warner Brothers symbol and the fanfare of music beginning, and we will end this minute with the credit of Madeline Kahn's name on the screen, and a lot of actual name credits in this first minute of Blazing Saddles, Walt.
Yeah, thankfully it's not the 5 long minutes of credits that we saw in Young Frankenstein, and a lot of the credits are actors, so we should have a good time going through this.
Yeah, the first 2 minutes of this movie dedicated to nothing but screen credit and showing us a beautiful prairie vista, but by the time we get to the end of the of minute 3, we get past the directed by Mel Brooks, and we'll be dealing with Lyle talking about napping on the job.
That's right. So we got a lot of fun ahead.
Yeah, these next few minutes should be a lot of fun this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then I can tell you, for you folks who are listening and say, well, where's your guest? Our first guest, will be none other than Jim O'Kane, who will be joining us on Thursday. He'll be joining us on Thursday to start off minute number 4.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to that. I've listened to some of his podcasts, and he'll be a great guest.
Yeah, well, I think he's, considered the grandfather of the Movies by Minutes community.
Yeah, and
because Pete and Alex from Star Wars Minute get the nod for creating the format,
right?
But I think Jim O'Kane is sort of like the thought behind let's create the group and everybody, and he's sort of been like the grand poobah of the listeners group or the Movies by Minutes group.
That makes sense. And he's he does Apollo 13 Minute. He's the big space guy.
He's done a lot of stuff. He's I'm going to call him, he's the grand poobah of the Loyal Order of Water Buffalo.
So a very dignified guy who for some reason agreed to join us.
For some reason, and early on. I guess he wants to help set the tone. He wants to help bring some credibility to what is otherwise normally yours and my show.
That's right, a careening disaster.
So that'll be coming up later this week. But let's go ahead and dive into this first minute. The first couple of minutes, the credits are usually a chance for us to talk about our thoughts of the movie we're doing, our memories, as well as some of the actors we're going to be experiencing and dealing with for the next 93 episodes. Walt, what's your first recollection, if you have, of seeing Blazing Saddles?
The first time I ever saw Blazing Saddles was on TV when I was a kid. And a friend of mine, who I've referenced before, Tommy, had seen it in the theaters. So he was talking about the campfire scene, and I was like, that didn't happen in the campfire scene. What are you talking about? He's like, no, this is what happens in the campfire scene. Well, they had edited out the sounds, so I feel like I really got robbed.
No fart noises on TV.
None. And then
do you remember what they covered it up with?
Horses.
Horse whinnies.
Yeah, it was all horse whinnies.
So there's our bridge from season 1 to season 2. Instead of every time we hear Frau Bluka,
that's right.
Every time apparently somebody went, we had, instead of a Bluka, we got to get a horse whinny instead.
That's right. So that's crazy. But they let a lot of other stuff in. So
yeah, they didn't eliminate any of the language whatsoever.
No.
And actually added a couple of scenes that weren't in the theatrical release.
That's right. And later on, I finally saw on VHS and saw the whole movie, and I was like, well, this was amazing. So much better not on TV. And then
I will tell you, I was disappointed that they didn't have the 2 additional Mongo scenes where Sheriff Bart defeats him 3 times in a row.
That's right. Because they're awesome. And when you see it on TV, those become part of your...
Until we even started this podcast, you only had seen the other one.
I had not seen the balloon scene.
Arcade style, put a quarter in the machine and draw against the mannequin. You hadn't seen the deep sea diving going for the Spanish doubloons. Balloons? Yes, right
balloons, the Spanish balloons, right on.
Yeah. Mongo, take chance.
Yeah, so I had never seen that. So
And we're gonna dive into all of this over the next 93 episodes. We have to be careful. I want to talk about the whole movie at once.
see,
and
now
we can't.
you're pulling a Walt.
Yes, I am.
So I guess I've got to be the voice of reason. So we're in big trouble.
Well, part of it is we just got done doing 2 back-to-back sort of Patreon special movies to end last year, where we didn't go minute by minute. We went kind of a chunk of the movie at a time. So I keep thinking we can do chunks, and no, we're back down to the minute by minute breakdown.
And we also did an interview where you and I asked one question, and Beverly
for like 10
D'Angelo
minutes.
took over. So that was awesome. So,
Well, hey, by the way, we are expecting to have some pretty significant interviews to go along with this particular podcast.
that's what I'm holding back from because I'm really pumped about that.
Until it happens, I'm not saying anything about anybody, but I can tell you, outside of our guests that we've already lined up, we actually have outside interviews that we're going to be splicing in here and there as appropriate.
That's right. And, or inappropriate.
Well, don't tell them that. At the time of this recording, they haven't recorded yet.
That's true. That's true.
It's the magic of editing and when you change time your release dates. So,
yeah. So it's going to be a good season. It's going to be a good season. So now, have we answered the question yet of where the title Blazing Saddles comes from?
I didn't know we asked the question where Blazing Saddles came
Well, I think
from.
the universe has asked the question.
Well, first of all, did you finish answering my question? You started talking about
Oh, yeah.
your first recollection.
My
seeing
first
it.
recollection.
So, yeah, hey, we're back.
Yeah, so back to Walt, who is in another universe already. So, so somewhere along the line, I saw it in the movie theater. I saw it on VHS and really got the theatrical release. It has long been one of my favorites, and I pull quotes from this movie all the time. And it's funny, even now going back and rewatching it, a couple of things that have been just kind of standing running jokes with a couple of friends of mine, I'm like, it was from Blazing Saddles. I couldn't remember where that came from. It was from Blazing Saddles.
Phrases like "What in the wide world of sports is it going on here?" Use that all the time.
All the time.
When Gene Wilder first comes through, he's like going,
Yeah.
I do that all the time. There are so many lines I quote just day in and day out from this movie. Part of it may be the age I was when I saw it. I was very young. I think I was 12 years old. It came on network television in Detroit, where I lived. I had a sleepover that night. We had just recently, my dad had to fix up the basement because we had a small 2-bedroom ranch home growing up. Well, my brother and I shared one room. My mom and dad had the other room. And my dad and mom had us show up in the kitchen one evening and said, we've got to let you know something. Apparently your mom was in the hospital and they were doing some tests and they discovered that apparently you got a brother or sister coming along in a few months that we weren't expecting. So he had to fix up the basement to have another bedroom so we could be downstairs. So we had sleepovers in the basement, which was great. It was so cool. But instead of sleeping in our beds, we were sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor. We had just finished watching that movie as part of the sleepover. And I'll never forget that that song, the theme song, resonated with me so strongly that I started dreaming it. And apparently I started singing it in my sleep because I sat up singing the lyrics to Blazing Saddles. And I've been a fan ever since.
Well, it's a very catchy theme. I even have it on my phone, on my my iTunes.
If you didn't know that it was a comedy you were about to watch, that would have been a fantastic theme to any Western you're about to watch.
Well, I was going to say, the guy who sings it, Morris.
Frankie Lane.
I'm sorry, the guy.
John Morris wrote it with
That's
Mel
right,
Brooks.
Morris
the
wrote
lyrics.
it. Frankie Lane, the singer, had sung for quite a few Westerns before that, and he didn't realize that this was a comedy. So when he started singing it, he was singing it in that same style and tone and had no idea it was a comedy until about the time the movie came out.
In fact, we'll get to some notes about him when his name comes up in the credits, but his stage name was Frankie Lane. His actual name was Francesco Paolo Lovecchio.
Ah, so from Alabama.
Yeah, no, he was an Italian-American singer.
Gotcha.
But he was also a songwriter and an actor, and he had nearly 75 years of performance under his belt.
Good grief. That's crazy.
But he was a well-known singer. We'll get into, again, his credits. I think tomorrow his credit name. Maybe
Yes,
tomorrow or
so.
Wednesday. Either way, I'll get into more of the detail. But yeah, Frankie Lane gets credit for singing the song, but Mel Brooks and John Morris came up with the lyrics, of which they got the nod for an Oscar on that one. They lost, but they at least got the nod.
So, well, one interesting thing about that, like you said, is you could put that theme in just about any other Western and it fits. So
It's amazing. It's still, again, it works right now. And because it is sort of like Young Frankenstein. You can do things and that are a little archaic, but because it's set so far back in history that even if you watch it today, you go, well, of course it looks old because they're setting it in the Old West.
Right.
You know, if you watch this and you watch Unforgiven or Tombstone, you've got the same sort of boarded steps and sidewalks. You've got the same saloon fronts. You've got the hitching posts for horses. So there's only so many ways you can make it look like the Old West. You know, it's not like, oh, that's so dated. No, that's the Old West.
Right. Yeah, that's what you get and expect from a Western.
By the way, are you a Western fan?
Oh, huge Western.
Yeah,
fan.
I love Westerns too. I didn't think so when I was a kid. The older I've gotten, especially hearing the stories of the West and realizing how uniquely Americana that is, I know so many friends in Europe that will, even when they get married and come honeymoon, they'll come to the Grand Canyon in the Old West because they don't have anything like that in Europe.
That's right. But a lot of Westerns were filmed in Spain.
In Spain, right. That same kind of, I guess, that weird backdrop. But in terms of but being where the history of the actual, to go to Tombstone, you have to go to Tombstone, Arizona.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
If you want to, there is no Grand Canyon in Europe.
Well, I watched something on Netflix not too long ago. The graveyard scene from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was shot in Spain, and so some guys went and found that graveyard, and that is just some of the most amazing scenery, and it really does look like some of the Arizona, New Mexico, Western areas. So, good place to film because it's cheap. But a lot of those spaghetti westerns were shot there. But yeah, and other than that, though, you really don't. You don't have what we have in the States anywhere else in the world.
We'll probably go along and dive into this throughout, but do you realize that the year this movie came out, 1974, was the same year the following movies were also out in terms of just big budget cinema? The Towering Inferno.
Great movie.
Came out that same year. We know, of course, Young Frankenstein capped off the end of the year. Earthquake from Universal Pictures. Yep. The Godfather Part 2.
Okay.
Mega movie. The sequel, Francis Ford Coppola's mobster story.
Movie.
You didn't like it?
No.
Oh, Godfather 1 and 2. Oh, my God. Amazing cinema to me.
I've just never been a big Godfather fan.
Airport. Airport 1975.
Yep, love the airport movies.
The Longest Yard.
Great movie. In fact, that I think is on Netflix this month.
Now, of all those movies, and there's others in there mixed in, but of all those movies, a lot of blockbusters in there.
A lot of blockbusters.
Which one would you say was the overall number one blockbuster of 1974?
Of all those movies?
Of all those movies.
Wow. Maybe I'd say The Towering Inferno.
You'd think so. Number 2.
Then it's got to be Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
The highest grossing film of 1974 with $119.5 million at the box office.
Well, you know what's really mind-blowing to me is $119 million at the box office, $2.6 million production budget, $117 million profit that year just at the box office.
This was technically the very first true mega hit for Mel Brooks. The producers arguably a fantastically written movie, but it didn't really find its own for years.
It sure didn't make $117 million.
No. He was actually a little bit struggling a little bit when he was approached to, hey, we've got this story idea. Would you be interested in this sort of Western that's got a black sheriff? And he's like, well, if it can buy me lunch, I guess I'm interested. And he was still kind of like a risky prospect.
Sure.
Like, there's talent there. He created Get Smart. He's a comedy writer. He's done some great stuff for television, but he hadn't had that big box office success. And honestly, while he was filming Young Frankenstein, they still weren't sure what the success of this was going to be.
That's right.
Did you realize that at one point the studio execs were ready to shelve Blazing Saddles unless it did well? They did a limited release. I think it was Chicago, New York, L.A., and I think maybe Austin or Dallas. They did a 4-city initial launch. And they said, well, based how it goes in those 4 cities, think about it. Those 4 cities made the decision for the rest of the country. New York, Chicago, L.A., and Dallas. And I can imagine Dallas would like it. Maybe.
Right. I was going to say, if you showed that movie in those cities today, in 3 of them you might have riots, and the other one, who knows, 50-50 reception.
It was so well received that they immediately went mass release and #1 movie at the box office. Oh, by the way, at the end of the year, they didn't do too bad. Young Frankenstein was #4.
Yeah,
that's what put Mel Brooks on the map.
insane.
1974 is the year, if there was ever a doubt that Mel Brooks was a titan in Hollywood, it was 1974.
So in 1974, 2 of the top 4 movies are comedies. I wonder if that has happened since then. I can't think of a year when the #1 movie and then 2 of the top 4.
In our lifetime, most #1 movies tend to be like the big blockbuster action adventure kind of movies.
That's right.
The comic book movies of our current day.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, it was all the 80s action movies used to be #1 at the box office. I think every now and then you'd get that drama in there, like Titanic would be #1. But I would even argue somehow James Cameron made Titanic kind of an action movie in places. There were some action sequences that kept you on the edge of your seat, but no means it wasn't Predator or Die Hard.
No.
But
and then even in this time frame, not too long after this, you had Jaws come out, and nobody was expecting Jaws to be
the next year, 1975.
Yeah. So you're not expecting that to be #1, and it ends up.
No, they released Jaws in the summer, which would be. This is so funny how things have changed.
That's right.
That's where you put out movies that were basically destined to die.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't put the big blockbuster movie out in the middle of the summer. Nobody went to the movies in the summer.
No.
You went vacationing and camping, and you were out bike riding and beaching. And
instead, the #1 movie keeps everybody from going to the beach.
Thanks to Spielberg, we now had the whole idea of the summer blockbuster.
That's right. So thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. Hey, George Lucas followed it up 2 years later and said, I'm releasing this movie in the summer. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. People actually go to the movies.
So, yeah, Blazing Saddles, #1. I know we kind of a bit of a side jaunt there, but now this gets us back around to, do you know that the name of the movie was not initially called Blazing Saddles?
It was not.
It was initially going to be called Black Bart, because Sheriff Bart, Black
Bart.
Sheriff. Initially, and the script I have here, they were initially going to go with the concept of Black Bart, but they even had another title they were talking about, which was Tex X.
Right.
But they eventually were. The studio didn't like these names. They had Tex X, they had Black Bart, and they even had one over here that they called Purple Sage.
Glad they didn't go with that.
No. According to the story, according to myth, Mel Brooks said he conceived of Blazing Saddles one morning while taking a shower. The idea of Blazing Saddles came to him in the shower. He wrote the song, got Frankie Lane to sing it. Frankie Lane had no idea, as you mentioned earlier, that it was for a comedy. And there you go. You set the stage for one of the best beginnings of any movie. Not just a comedy. It's just a great beginning. It hooks you right away with that song.
He rode a blazing saddle. He wore a shining star.
It does. It's a great song.
I love the whip cracks, too. Adding the
I do
whip
too.
cracks are fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, the other place that you have that is in the Blues Brothers when they do the Rawhide song. You got the good whip cracks in there, but not many not many songs out there have the whip crack as one of the instruments.
Yeah, no, not unless you sing, what's the Christmas song? The Sleigh Ride.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, maybe there were more than I thought.
Well, that's the only other one I know that has a whip crack in it.
Yeah, once we get our music expert on, we'll have to ask him.
Yeah, we should probably look for somebody who knows what they are talking about before we start talking.
Well, this is a podcast, so obviously we're experts on everything.
We
right?
know everything. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening.
We are know-it-alls.
But anyway, whatever inspiration it was coming to him in the shower, I think it's a great title, Blazing Saddles. And that's one of the first things we get is as the logo burns away, we get literally the Warner Brothers logo burning apart, showing us the vista, and then the word Blazing Saddles comes flying in and fills up the whole screen.
So that's so we're off to a great start on a Western. I mean, it has a very Western feel right up front. You don't get the sense that this is a comedy. You feel like you're in a Western.
And again, the song not sounding like it was a spoof. The lyrics don't sound like spoof lyrics. There's nothing zany about it. Holds up still to this day. If you listen to the lyrics, works perfectly for the song for the story we're telling. We're telling a story about a guy, a sheriff, who's there to help save the town.
I think one of the great spoofs of all time is Airplane. And Airplane, of course, starts off with the Jaws music and the tail of the airplane going through. So you know immediately that you're in a spoof. This, you really do feel like you're in a Western.
First character we get to, and of course the star of the story of a movie that was initially going to be called Black Bart, is Cleavon Little. Cleavon Little getting the title first credit outside of a Mel Brooks film and the title of the movie. We get Cleavon Little.
I want to spend a lot of time on Cleavon, and maybe we can do that in one of our first episodes when we actually see him. But he unfortunately died of cancer after only being in the industry about 20 years. But he has a long list of credits that we want to spend some time on. But I think he was perfect for this part.
Oh, he was great. And we can thank Richard Pryor for this. We're going to thank Richard Pryor for a lot of this movie.
Absolutely.
One of the stories goes that, obviously Mel Brooks wanted Richard Pryor to play the role. The studio, for the budget that was going to be put forward to the film, and the liability issues, there was already rumors around Hollywood that you're going to go over budget because chances are Richard Pryor is not going to be focused. He's not going to be there on the set like you need. So you're going to blow your budget. You're going to blow your schedule. We're not prepared to ensure the production if you put him involved. And Mel Brooks was going to quit. And the joke was Richard Pryor said, "Look, I got writing credits on this, and I haven't gotten my last couple of checks. If you quit, they're not going to pay me. So you need to keep doing this." And apparently, it was during one of the casting calls that Richard Pryor was sitting in with everybody, and they saw Cleavon Little, and he just stood out to everybody. Like, he was so laid back, but he had this sort of charm, this charisma. And the story goes that Richard Pryor looked over to Mel and said, "Look, you argue, you put me in. I'm sort of maybe, more of that caramel color skin. I've got the fat mustache. A lot of people might mistake me for Cuban. I'm not necessarily, Black Bart. There's no doubt when you look at Cleavon Little that he's black. That's a black sheriff. And that's what's going to scare the hell out of the people of Rock Ridge."
That's a good point.
And then Mel Brooks goes, and he's so charming, he's so handsome, he's got a dazzling smile, he looks great. And Richard Pryor talked him into saying, "That's the guy you need. That's your character. That's who you need."
And he casts another Shakespearean actor in a comedy.
Shakespearean-trained, classically trained stage actor for this role.
Yeah, so just in this movie alone, you've got Cleavon Little,
Gene Wilder was Shakespearean-trained.
Madeline Kahn,
who came from an operatic background.
That is crazy talent all stacked together in a comedy.
Right. And we haven't even gotten to Harvey Korman's introduction yet.
Yeah, right. Well, and the way that this movie is set, I think that Cleavon Little was the perfect pick over really any other working actor.
We loved the Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder buddy
movies. No question. We almost did Silver Streak this season.
Exactly. But I don't think I could see Richard Pryor in this movie.
No, and I was going to say, I think that he would have been so overpowering and dominant just because of where he was in his career up against where Gene and some of the other actors were in their career. Plus, his personality is so strong. I think it would have almost been, we would be looking back at this movie now as a Richard Pryor movie. I think he would have been that dominant. I'm
going to take a different approach. I don't know that he would have I don't think he would have dominated in the sense of made everybody look small. I think the tone of the sheriff would have been so different. It would have been, I love the straight lace nature of Cleavon Little. The good guy who has no baggage, and he's very straight.
He's got a very strong subtlety to him.
Right. I think that's what helps sell the role of Sheriff Bart.
I agree 100%.
Richard Pryor would have been funny as Sheriff Bart, but we needed somebody who could play the straight man almost.
It would have become a bigger comedy than it was a Western. Does that make sense?
Maybe we would have missed on the reason why we have a black sheriff.
Right.
And I think he may have been right. You might have dismissed the fact that Richard Pryor's black. You might say, well, maybe he's just, of Mexican descent, or maybe he comes from the Caribbean. He's not necessarily an African-American sheriff.
Well, and I think we all know who Richard Pryor is. And, for anybody who was watching it in the theater at the time, you knew who Richard Pryor was. I mean, he's great stand-up.
Well, he didn't.
He was.
Well, see, the thing is, you have to remember, we're coming at it from looking back.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
The studio was aware of his rising kind of drug use and problems and some of his partying. He hadn't had the mega monster hit just yet on the screen.
Yeah, in some ways, with all his problems, it's amazing that he ever did. But he's a very dominant personality. So
well, Mel Brooks was brilliant to be able to at least say, look, I need your writing. I need your advice. I need your perspective. I need that. This is a story about racism, and it's an anti-racist movie.
That's right.
I need someone who can help make sure we're not losing focus of that, and we want to make sure we're not going too far one way or the other with the language. In fact, every use of the N-word went through Richard Pryor.
Oh, that's interesting.
Every single one. In fact, Mel Brooks sometimes said, do we really need that here? And Richard Pryor would go, oh, yeah. In fact, not only do you need that here, you need it here as well.
Huh. Interesting.
So Richard Pryor understood what the movie they were trying to tell. He understood.
Makes sense.
You can't have a bad guy. You can't have a racist bad guy who's not acting like a racist bad guy. I mean,
good point.
Good point. You know, how do you make the point of how bad and how stupid these people are if you don't write them bad and stupid?
Well, and then you take a Cleavon Little, who is such a talented actor, and he is able to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pairing of the great writing and Cleavon Little's amazing acting really does bring this story to life.
Yeah, I love Richard Pryor. I do. I've loved his comedy, his stand-up. I've liked in 3 of the 4 pairings of him and Gene Wilder, for the most part. There are a couple of bombs, and like every actor, there's a couple of bombs in your career. But I see his talent, and I understand why he, at some point, was considered the funniest comedian in America. That his stage comedy was so raw and so out there, but at the same time, so funny. And, you know, you couldn't have a comedian, I don't think, like a Richard Pryor today.
There are some that show up from time to time, but they end up, I think, with such a niche following that you'll never, I don't think we'll ever have another.
But Richard Pryor's comedy was very similar in what Mel Brooks was trying to do with this. He told you stories with street language and ghetto talk to pull you into that world, to then hit you with the fact that there's so much similarity with us, and we can recognize, you know, what is it like to be poor? What is it like to have friends who get hooked on drugs or drunk? Or he could do social commentary through his comedy.
I think that Red Fox was another one who was just like that. Of course, he had been too old for a part like this.
To Pryor.
Yeah, and Sanford and Son is still one of my favorite shows ever. But Red Fox had that same ability, that he pulled you in and he made you feel like you were his friend, and then he could hit you with those subtle blows at that social commentary.
And they weren't afraid to poke fun at their own. We all have certain ethnic things that we are that are associated with our ethnicities or our culture, wherever we came from. They understood that it's okay to poke fun at that too, because some people within your own culture take those cultural identities too far.
Right.
And so you can poke fun at your own at the same time you poke fun at other people. And we all gain a better understanding that we're all human beings underneath.
Right. And I think that ultimately, I don't know that they sat down and said, that's what we're going to convince everybody of. But
no, I think that just is there.
I think it's there. That's right. That's right.
I think those would make for the best comedians. I mean, for all of his flaws, Bill Cosby still, in terms of his stand-up comedy routines, because he made every one of his stories somehow relatable to everyone in the audience. I remember when we would, get arguing at the dinner table. I remember when my mom got so angry she would have a conniption. I remember my dad screwing things up and getting yelled at. I mean,
I remember my dad giving me cake for breakfast because it was easy.
Chocolate cake. It's got wheat and eggs and milk.
That's
orange juice. Ooh.
We can all relate to that.
These are not your children.
Well, and I think that's an important point, and we'll have more of that as we go. But I think Cleavon Little was just a genius pick for this part.
Absolutely, without a doubt. He is the center. I mean, he is the star of this movie. There are a lot of named people in this movie, but this movie is about Sheriff Bart. It is Tex X. It is the black sheriff. That's right.
And Jim becomes a great foil against him. And or a great sidekick with him, and he brings a whole new perspective to it, and of course Gene is the next one on the list, and the two of them together are a really powerful team, and I almost hate that they never did anything else together.
I know. I know. In some ways, I wonder how many other movies they could have done in similar buddy fashion as they do here.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we kind of go, okay, how would it have been? I don't think that Silver Streak would have been as good with Cleavon Little as it was with Richard Pryor.
I don't think so. You're right.
But I think that there is there's a great heart that we see between Gene and Cleavon Little. So,
what I think I love about the dynamic between Gene and Cleavon is when I watched the movie, I said it was 11 or 12 when I saw it. I've loved this movie my whole life. I've always wanted to be the Waco Kid and help Sheriff Bart.
Right.
And my black friends always wanted to be Sheriff Bart with a gunslinger, super fast gunslinger, the Waco Kid.
Sure.
And unconsciously, you don't even realize it, you put yourself in the character you maybe more identify with in terms of, ethnicity, but you wanted to be part of that buddy pairing.
That's right.
And all of a sudden I realized I wanted to be with the black sheriff, the one who has the ideas, who wins, who defeats Mongo, who defeats Hedy Lamar. That's Headley. He wins. He's the hero.
That's right.
Jim's not the hero. Jim helps him.
No,
Jim's his right-hand man.
That's right.
He's heroic. I'm not going to get into this whole thing like you with Christmas
Vacation. I was going to say he's the cousin Eddie.
But, I wanted to be the Waco Kid because I thought it was cool to be the gunslinger, but I wanted to do that to help Sheriff Bart.
Right.
And I knew kids who wanted to be Sheriff Bart who needed the help of the Waco Kid because it took the two of them to win. It took the both cultures coming together to win. And I love that. I love that all overriding message that, hey, you put yourself aligned with the right people that have the right talents. Who cares what you look like? It's the talent you bring.
That's right. That's right. And we all have that innate sense within us, I think, that we need other people and that we need somebody else. I think that when you look at entertainment, there is that thread through so much history of entertainment where you see pairings of buddies and, Lethal Weapon and so many others. There's always this partnership.
Well, it goes all the way back to extending a Laurel and Hardy welcome.
That's right.
After that, you had Abbott and Costello. You had George and Gracie. You had the Honeymooners. Ralph and Alice. It's always a pairing, and almost always one has something the other one needs or is missing, and vice versa.
That's right.
And they're stronger. The two end up being stronger than their individual strengths that come to the table.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I love it. I love the pairing. All
and
right.
This is a great chemistry between those two. And of course, Gene, we can't say enough about him. And we will have a lot to say about him as we go. But then one of my favorites, and I don't think we've really talked about this in our prep, but Slim Pickens, just fantastic as Taggart. He is just amazing. And I know one of our favorite duds is 1941.
Oh, yeah.
And Slim Pickens, of course, is an integral part of that movie.
You call it a dud. It actually made money in the cinema, it wasn't the mega blockbuster. And a lot of people are like, ooh, maybe Steven Spielberg was a two-trick pony. He did Jaws, he did Close Encounters, and then we get this.
Yeah.
But I still think it's fantastic.
Oh, I love it. I was watching.
I see its flaws. I see its gross flaws in places, but I love 1940.
It is still great. John Belushi, Slim Pickens. You go down the list on that one. But Slim Pickens' long Hollywood career, and I don't even know how many credits he had. But when you roll through his credits, it's just one after another that you're like, oh, I forgot he was in that. Oh, yeah, I remember him being in that. And it's just amazing what that man did in his career.
What I love about Slim Pickens is he is so genuine. The cowboy, the ranch, sort of like the head of the ranch or of the workers. You get that sense. He's got the right accent. He's got the right disposition. He's the right delivery. He hated using the N-word.
Yeah.
Most of the actors actually did when you talk to him behind the scenes. But Slim Pickens, I think he actually told Burton Gilliam at one point, he goes, look, these are our lines. Do your lines. And I think even Cleavon Little told Burton Gilliam, said, I have no problem with you saying the lines because you're saying lines. Now, if you were to say this legitimately, we're going to have words.
That's right.
But I expect you to do your job because these are the lines you have to say.
That's right. And I'm sure that had to be a struggle for some of them.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I could not. Honestly, it'd be really hard for me to be on a movie set right now. Like, let's say a Quentin Tarantino flick where it's meant to be gritty language and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And be saying those kinds of words to a black actor who I'm having a great time with at lunch before we film a scene. And next thing I know, I have to drop the N word.
Yeah.
That would be tough.
That's tough.
Because it's not in my DNA.
Right.
But I also understand that guy is like, look, we're making a real movie here. You need to really say it and really mean it while the camera's rolling. Otherwise, it's going to look bad. And do your job.
Right. We have a story to tell.
Do your job.
And that story has a purpose.
And I know we kind of spun away, but Slim Pickens, long career. And let's face it, any actor that can catch the eye of Stanley Kubrick,
oh, yeah,
obviously there's something there. And with Dr. Strangelove, he just a famous role riding the nuclear bomb down like he's a cowboy.
Yes.
Yeehaw!
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit more about him as we get to him, but he had 172 credits. 172. And I mean, I'm scrolling through it real quick. Like, we could spend an entire 2 episodes on just Slim Pickens credits. It is absolutely insane. And he has one of those faces that the second you see him, it's like, I like that guy. I really like, that's Slim Pickens. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Faces, he has a very distinct voice, very distinct delivery. You can't mix him up with any other actor.
No.
And by the way, that's why we didn't do the Slim Pickens picking apart ride, because too many credits. We would never be able to get through them all.
1 minute at a time, the 172 credits. Well, and how many times over the years, I mean, I would love to know how many times over the years I have said, what in the wide world of sports is going on here?
All the time. I mean, still... I know BK on his show on Saturdays on the radio station uses that as a soundbite.
Oh, yeah.
So every now and then we'll throw that in there if we're doing weird or odd news and somebody has like this crazy news, like the Florida man story.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Florida man found naked lighting his own butt on fire. What in the wide world of sports is going on here? You know, you can't help it. So he gets a co-starring credit. I mean, so even though Cleavon Little's the star, of all the other actors in this movie, outside of maybe Mel Brooks, he was technically the biggest actor in this movie.
I'm not surprised. And he has, when we go through this movie, there is scene after scene after scene after scene where he just kills it. Mm-hmm. And it shows you what a great, serious straight actor he is, but also what a great comedic actor he has. And he has such great timing. And we'll see he and Harvey Korman working together on some scenes that are just unbelievably funny. So I'm really looking forward to diving in and getting to some of his scenes.
All right, we've got the next screen gives us 3 actor names that we'll mention very briefly. As you said, I think we'll dive into some of their backgrounds and careers as they show up on screen. But David Huddleston, I guess sort of is he considered sort of the head honcho of the town? He sort of seems to always be taking charge of the crowd discussions.
Kind of the mayor, I guess, or something.
But I don't think they ever give him a title or anything.
I don't think they do. If they do, we'll catch it later, but I don't think.
But he's the big gregarious. He played in, for folks who know The Big Lebowski, he was Mr. Lebowski in the wheelchair that, you know, they got the 2 Lebowskis mixed up.
Right.
It's like, you're the Big Lebowski. I'm like the dude.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and he has my favorite, I'm going to say this now like 14 times during the movie. I'm going to go, this is my favorite line. But one of my favorite lines where he says, where he jumps on the Irish.
Yes.
And I love that line. But yes, he plays Olson Johnson, one of the many Johnsons mentioned in this movie.
We'll take the blanks and the blanks, but we don't want the Irish.
Right. Oh, no prairie shit. We'll take them all.
Liam Dunn. Oh, my goodness. Could we have a better Reverend Johnson than Liam Dunn?
There is no way. He is awesome. And I was going through some minutes with him in them, and I was really paying attention to him because one of the guests that we were going to have for one of his scenes is actually a minister.
I believe is a priest.
Is a priest. So I was kind of paying a little bit more attention to that one. And he is awesome. I mean, because he's not pretentious, but he has a way of really projecting that's fantastic. But you'll also remember him from season 1 in Young Frankenstein.
With basically no lines.
With no lines, and he gets kicked in the nuts.
Right.
So he was the old man on the table, and we are doing these in opposite order. Blazing Saddles was filmed and came out first, and then Young Frankenstein. So we're seeing him more at the peak of his health, I guess, before all of his cigarette smoking caught up with him.
Well, he was still on the backslide, but
yeah, he's a thin guy. And
all you need to know about the character of Reverend Johnson and then how this whole movie goes is just one of his lines is a great little microcosm of everything. Because just as everybody's going to shoot the sheriff, he holds up the Bible and goes, "Let's remember this good book and what it says." And then they shoot the book, blow a hole in it. And all he can do is go, "Son, you're on your own." That is the movie in a nutshell.
Yes, it is.
The Bible gets blown away by the townspeople because they can't listen to the preacher.
Which is a really interesting commentary on, how people are.
Yeah, I'll go to church on Sunday, but if I don't like something
I don't like it.
Monday through Saturday,
That's right.
I'm gonna break the law. I'm gonna church's law.
Yep, I've gone to church plenty of times and sat there and gone, man, I don't like what it says, but it's truth. But the reaction is so great, and his reaction is so great. So we're gonna have fun talking about him.
Third name on the screen, Alex Karras, the inestimable Mungo. Inestimable.
So, how many people said when we started talking about, do you want to come on as a guest? How many people said, "Oh, I want a Mongo scene"?
A Mongo scene. Do you realize that Mongo, obviously being, we don't know what it is because they say, ladies and gentlemen, and Mongos, but Richard Pryor was responsible for basically every Mongo scene. He conceived of, wrote, and came up with all of the Mongo bits.
That seems about right.
I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget the first time he comes riding into town and he's on a frickin' bull. And as the bull turns around and we see the backside, on its butt cheeks, half is written yes, the other half's written no.
I know, and I now know what that means, and I did some research on that.
Yeah,
believe it or not,
gotta save that for that minute.
Yep. But that is it's really funny, and I think when we talk about it, some people are going to go, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
Yes, no.
Well, one of the things before I saw this movie is somebody in my elementary school said, "You have to see this movie. A guy punches a horse."
Mm-hmm.
So it's Mongo, and it is just crazy. It's crazy.
Fantastic. Next screen we get to, we've got another 3 sets of names. We start off with Higgins from the old Magnum PI, John Hillerman.
Yes, and he has he again. You've already given one of his lines, the Laurel and Hardy welcome, but.
Yeah, I guess he's the head of the welcoming committee.
I guess so. He's definitely one of the elder Johnsons of the town.
He also apparently is very interested in science. He considers himself sort of an upscale citizen. He dresses really, really nicely. He talks about the anthrax is going to be a thing of the past.
That's right.
Got all of this information, but he's still part of the
He's
same.
kind of like the guy from Cheers, Norm's buddy, that kind of knows everything.
Oh, Cliff.
Cliff, yeah. He's kind of the Cliff Claiborne of the town. But his name, of course, is Howard Johnson.
Howard Johnson. He's got the orange roof on his outhouse.
That's right. Down to the orange roof on.
Next one we've got is George Firth.
Yes, George Firth. Oh, yeah. He's Van Johnson. So another Johnson. We can just call him all Mr. Johnson.
Now, was it George Firth is the guy who sort of plays, it looks like he's always wearing sort of the armbands around his shirt, almost like he's a vaudeville singer or something. But he's the one who comes charging in to say, "Sheriff, it's Mungo. He's it."
That's
right.
right.
Of course, he thinks the sheriff's at the window and realizes the sheriff's not at the window anymore, so he has to stop and say it all again when he comes in to find him in the middle of the room.
He's kind of a weird character. So,
"Oh, thank you, Sheriff."
That had to be fun to play. Yeah, he's stupid enough
The fool's going to.
fool's gonna.
I mean, the sheriff's going to do it.
Yeah.
No! Don't do that. Don't shoot him. You're just going to make him mad.
That's right. Oh my gosh!
All right. The most highfalutin, snobby sounding, including the spelling name, comes next, and you would never know the character this person plays. Claude Ennis Starrett Jr.
Yes, we'll give everybody a couple of seconds to guess.
Claude Ennis Starrett Jr.
And he is one of the most endearing, And misunderstood characters, Gabby Johnson.
He plays Gabby, the frontier gibberish swilling lookout on the top of the roof line, announcing that the sheriff is near.
That's
not what I said.
Darn it.
God, dang it. I can't do it's Yosemite Sam in live action.
Absolutely.
He's just, and the church service that we'll get to in a few weeks. Our guy John Huddleston, or was it not John? David Huddleston. When he says, "I'm glad all these wonderful children were here to hear that genuine frontier gibberish."
I'm going to say it again. That's my favorite line of the movie.
So this guy, Claude Ennis Starrett Jr., he actually changed his name later to just Jack Starrett. So you'll see his changed the name of the credits. But he certainly had one. I would have never guessed if you had given me all the cast members and said which one plays Gabby Johnson. I would have never associated that name. I don't know why I would assume it would be a gruffer sounding name. But for some reason, I thought that was a little funny.
Yeah, and he had a bunch of credits, too. He was in all kinds of stuff.
We get one more starring credit, gets the screen all to his name, also starring Mel Brooks, who gets to play a cameo. I guess it's not even a cameo because it's a pretty significant role in this, playing the governor of the state,
That's right.
Governor Lepedemain.
That's right. He also, he has
William
three
J.
different parts in this movie.
He does play, let's see, I know 1, 2, does he play a third part?
He plays the governor. He plays an Indian.
Right.
And he, I believe, is in the pie fight in the commissary and as one of the crowd members. I may be wrong about that. For some reason, I was thinking he has 3.
I know for a fact he plays the chief of the Indian tribe that attacks the wagon train.
Right.
That
And he speaks Yiddish.
That he does. Awesome gang. Spicy from Shugana. No. Capo walk. Take off. I could quote this whole movie right now.
Oh, I know. And
but he's got the
challenge.
funniest commentary then after letting them go, after letting poor the poor Black Bart to and his family to go. Woof. We are going to be in so much trouble.
Gosh, we are. It is going to be insane.
While you look up whether or not Mel Brooks decided to play in the pie fight, someone who focused heavily in the pie fight, but also throughout the entire movie, Harvey Korman gets a credit to the screen. The ultimate straight man who can play over the top to the Tim Conways of the world. He's the one actor that somehow can go over the top in everything, and yet I don't think he's overacting.
No.
It's like, oh, that's just him. That's how he acts. But it's so over the top. Anybody else that acted like he did on screen, I'd be like, oh, come on, back it down a little.
Yeah, he's almost, it's pretentious, obnoxious.
He's like the Frasier before Frasier.
Yeah.
He talks almost like you'd say, is he British? No, he's just speaking so highfalutin.
He's just a jerk.
He's pretentious.
Yeah.
So, and he's fantastic as Hedley Lamar.
He is, but there are also a couple of scenes, and I think one of them is kind of early in the movie, where he also has kind of a childish quality to him. He's a very interesting character.
What, when he's in the bathtub?
Yeah.
Froggy love Daddy. Daddy love Froggy.
Where's Froggy? Where's Froggy?
Look, damn your eyes.
Yeah, which we get that again. So, well, and Harvey Korman, if you ever just go to YouTube and watch him on the Carol Burnett show, some of the funniest scenes are when he loses it on the Carol Burnett show. And
because Tim Conway would always throw something his way.
Yeah.
Even after
and
rehearsing,
he would improv most of his
they
stuff.
would do this stuff live, and Tim Conway would give him a different look, a different angle, a different word, a different take, and all of a sudden Harvey had to just deal with it.
Oh, and sometimes just go completely off script and totally throw.
But
totally
he could still hold his own, even though he broke.
Yeah, no question.
Harvey Korman is just one of those actors that always sort of played a kind of a second fiddle, not really ever the lead, but always perfect when he was in the role he was in. He just I can't think of a role that I haven't liked him in that I've seen him play.
Right, I agree. And I think in this, he was the perfect person to cast for this part.
Right, because there was just enough of that smarminess, that sleaziness that you didn't like him almost from the beginning, but you could understand as a politician how highly polished he was.
That's right.
It was all about his look, his delivery, how he could take control of a room. You're like, he is a politician.
He's also kind of the hand behind the curtain,
right.
that's running the puppet show.
It's like he's the real governor almost.
Yes, he is. And he's manipulating Lepidamine and his career.
And in true politics going on with the satire, the governor's an absolute dolt. That's actually the lieutenant governor that's doing everything.
Absolutely. The other thing about him is he's big. He's a tall guy.
He's tall.
But he's very lean. And so he fits that kind of darker suit that he looks like the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a perfect cast for that.
And one of the few guys that I think can still pull off the mustache without looking like he's either a porn star or walking around with a raincoat looking to flash little kids.
Yeah, so why are you looking at me?
I'm not.
Just because I have a mustache?
No, you've got a beard. You've got the
that's
thing.
true.
I'm talking about like Burt Reynolds could pull off the stash.
Yeah,
right. Magnum PI, right? What's his name?
Magnum PI.
No.
Tom
Selleck.
Tom Selleck
can pull off. Very few people pull off just a stash well.
Right. I don't. Yeah, I have to do.
I actually
full beard.
grew one out for a spoof comedy we did, and it was perfect because of that. You just laughed when you saw me.
Right.
But no, I could not have a stash at all.
Yeah. No.
But he pulls it off very, very well.
Yeah, you do. You do have to have a certain look to pull that.
Last one, and I know we were worried about credits that we wouldn't have enough to talk about.
I wasn't worried about it.
Madeline Kahn. There are so many actors. I mean, age comes for all of us. Things happen. I mean, you can't stop Father Time. She died way too soon. Just way, way too young. Way too young. She just was such a brilliant comedic actress. No fear to try anything, do anything. There is a story that when she showed up to audition for Mel Brooks for this role, and Mel Brooks realized because about, the whole tie-in with Hedy Lamarr and Hedley, and then that she was kind of like this bombshell vixen with long legs. So she shows up and he's like, can you show me your legs? And she goes, oh, one of those kind of interviews or one of those kind of auditions. Well, screw you. And turned around to walk. Goes, no. And Mel Brooks is like, no, I'm married. I'm happy. I'm not. No. The character needs to be similar to like the what do you call it? Like the pinup girl style. Right. It's about the long, leggy, blonde, bombshell kind of character. And she's like, oh, okay. She goes, and then he said she hiked up her skirt and he's like, yep, she's got the legs.
Yep.
And she'll show them later.
And it's funny, you've mentioned this several times, that she actually is a very good singer and had to kind of tone down her talent in order.
I never knew that until we did
this.
Young Frankenstein last season, that she is classically trained as an opera singer, which you want to talk about the elite of the elite. It's not my cup of tea in terms of entertainment. I appreciate the difficulty in being able to sing opera.
Right.
I mean, you have to be an idiot. I don't care if it's not your cup of tea. You can respect the talent it takes to be able to have that kind of breath control, that kind of volume, to be able to hit the notes they hit in the way they hit them. That's how she's trained.
Right. You have to hit them big.
And
you can't be a small singer to do that.
And it wasn't until we did Young Frankenstein that I got the story that said it was so hard to have her sing badly in this movie that they, in Young Frankenstein, she was allowed to sing normal.
Right.
And you could tell how well she sings. But in this one, they had apparently several takes that they had to stop rolling because she started to sound too good. She was hitting her notes.
I can safely say that if I was ever called on to sing, they would not stop me because I was singing too well.
If you needed someone to sing poorly, I'm your man.
I'm all over it.
You got it. Well, and that's where we end for this minute number 1, Madeline Kahn's name on the screen, and we're going to have to wait till tomorrow to continue this discussion.
Well, and one last thing about Madeline Kahn, I know I said this when we were going through Young Frankenstein. Originally, I saw Young Frankenstein first, so Madeline Kahn was so good at being bad that I didn't really like her, but this movie really helped change my whole feeling about her, just because she is so good and she's so funny. So, and again, great chemistry with the other actors. So,
all right, so let me very quickly set the stage for what's coming tomorrow because we have more credits. You and I are going to tackle that before we get to any guests. We will start with a featuring screen that's going to have several actors on it. And when we get done with minute number 2, we'll actually see one of the show's producers, Michael Hertzberg, on the screen. So we've still got several credits that we need to roll through tomorrow.
Well, and I still am having fun with the credits, but I can't wait to get into the movie.
All right, Walt, somebody who's brand new, they didn't bother going back and checking season 1. They thought, hey, Blazing Saddles is my favorite. I want to listen to this one right off the bat. Where can they learn a little bit more about us and participate with maybe some discussion?
Stop what you're doing right now. Go to facebook.com/thewilderride and follow us there. And then click on the button that allows you to join the listeners group. You'll be asked just a couple of questions. Make sure you're not a Russian bot of some kind trying to sneak in and influence our love for Hunt for Red October instead of this movie. And just join in the conversation. We've got, I don't know how many people now, 500-600 people who have joined our group, and some great discussions going on about these movies, some other movies. Some of the other Movie by Minute folks jump in every once in a while with some great discussion, and we'd love to have you there. Also, you can get some of our other pay content of our reviews of Poltergeist and Christmas Vacation at patreon.com/thewilderride.
And couldn't have said it any better than myself, so well done, Walt. That's going to do it for us. I know we went a little long, so we'll just leave it there, but please come back tomorrow for minute number 2 of Blazing Saddles.
Where we sit around the campfire and enjoy our beans.
And Bart was his name. And Bart was his name.
Showing we cannot sing for
That's exactly right. For prairie. Prairie.
Where are you headed, cowboy?
Nowhere special.
Nowhere special. I always wanted to go there.
Come on.
What was Jackie? Oh, see, BK is going to be yelling at me right now. It was what's the woman's the wife in the Jackie something show?
Onassis.
No,
Jackie.
No, oh my God, I gotta call this now. Honeymooners.
Oh yeah.
Jackie Gleason, and what was the wife's name?
Mrs. Gleason. Mrs.
Alice.
Alice.
Yeah. So,
Golly.
like,